finishing up the last bit of a quarantine. Did go ahead and do all of my new floors and everything, continue the wood flooring into here. But before I go ahead and close it out, while I'm putting in the door trim and everything, I keep running into this. This is my pantry. And so every time you open this up, you can get your normal foodstuffs, have some shelving in here. More or less all the spices and everything are attached to the door. Now this is great if you don't have any storage, but the problem that I find is this. They're cheap, they're chintzy, they only hold so much. Of course, they're attached to the door, so you come in here, you know, I'm not exactly narrow, so, you know, I run into it and I take a chance of knocking them off. It just doesn't seem to work out very well. I got other wire racks that go over here, but that's a whole nother deal. So what I wanted to do was take down the cheap stuff, build something a little more substantial, put my spices and everything in there, and then it's a little more solid. If I do run into it, I'm liable to hurt me more than I am the actual spice rack. So first things first, get all this out of the way. See, look at that. Already knocking them down. And a couple of Phillips screws. I'll find my impact. Now this is your typical cheap fake wood door. That one seems to have a plastic doodad in it. Leave that there for now. So really, you can screw into it. You'll probably have holes in it if you ever take it back down like that was, but no big ordeal. So in order to figure out some measurements, you can figure out, this is basically a 28-inch door. Now you can't just go and start putting boards on here without knowing how much space you have. So what I planned on doing was I gotta go in here and make a line down here, down vertically down the door. That'll let you know how far over you can set your 1x, so when you close the door, you're not actually running into the door frame itself. So into the closet I go, I'll be right back. Let's grab a line on the inside. And look at that, coming out of the closet. So this line, although permanent, is actually how much it insets from the side. So you can take your 1x over the left side of your shelf and butt it up against that line vertically, and then you know that when you go to shut the door, it'll actually close and not pinch in the door jamb. So now what we could do, we get some 1x's and start making a layout for your width. But then you also want to know your height. You're not going to put, or at least I'm not, going to put shelves all the way at the bottom of the door. So you'll probably come up to about the 2 foot from the floor, you know, and then you're not reaching all the way down to the floor to get the stuff. So from 2 feet, say the last one's at 6 feet. That'll give you your shelves, say roughly every foot in between there. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves. You can divide it up if you want. Now, from 2 feet to 6 feet, obviously is 4. So you're gonna want at least a 4 foot left, and then you're gonna come up some more so that way you can make a bracket to go across that'll actually hold the stuff on the shelf. You just make flat shelves, you yank the door open, everything falls off. So we're gonna go 2 foot, 6 inches, or not 2 foot. I can't even do math. Why am I building stuff? So from here to here is 4, we'll add 6 inches. So we need 4.5 feet. Let's make our lefts and rights. 2 4.5 foot boards. These are cut in a 1x6. Hindsight, I could have probably done them in 1x4 to make it a little more shallow to stay up against the door and not so wide like those, but I'm already used to those. So it's going to essentially be about the same. The old ones are 6 inches. Nah, this is a 1x6, which, you know, is not actually a 1x6, so it's only 5.5. So I'm going to shave about a 1/2 inch, but that stupid bar added to it. So 2 of them in 4.5 feet. Didn't bore you with cutting them. Now you need to know width, because it's going to be a simple design. So we said earlier, what, 23.5? Let's just call it 23. Now, you can't just go start cutting boards. If this is your left and your right, you can't start cutting your boards across here at 23, because you have to include the width of the actual boards at the ends. So together, they're 1.5 inches, which means instead of 23, you're going to cut your boards at 21.5. And then that will give you the space to be able to put them in between. So I'm going to figure out how many that I want down through here, cut some of them at 21.5, and then I'll be back. So while I'm down there cutting boards, I'll take a moment. The original plan was to use plexi across the front so that way you can still see through it and see what you're getting a hold of. But I wasn't a real big fan of the plexi look. There's some of it in here. So you end up finding these at Lowe's. These came in a 4-foot section. So I'll actually be able to more or less cut them in half at 24 and get 2 shelf brackets per. So that's 6 of them total, which means that it'll go on the ends of it and it'll sit out here towards the front. Now granted, I didn't get a chance to prime these in white just yet. So these are still natural, but no big deal. They can always be painted afterwards. So go downstairs and get those cut, come back upstairs, start laying it out, take a measurement for these, and get these cut as well. Went downstairs, got my 6 pieces cut. These 2 will be the front brackets to go across the shelves. And there are 6 shelves and 2 extra ones cut the same length at 21.5. Now, I only planned for 6 of these. I have 2 extra ones. They will come in handy later. So for now, what I done was you can choose your own shelving size, whichever way you want to do it. If you want to do it symmetrical, you want taller ones, shorter ones. So I simply started at the top and come down 8 inches, marked my lines across, so that way I can center up my shelf. I come down another 10 inches from 8 to 18, another 10 to 28, another 10 to 38, and then divided the last 2 and made them a little bit smaller, so you have 46 and 54, if my math is right. Can't do it earlier, so make your marks on both sides, your uprights, and then go ahead and make sure that you center up your shelves, and then attach them. Now, you can do it a couple of ways. You can do it with nails. I don't really trust that idea because there's nothing really to soak it in together, pull it in tight, because some of these boards aren't exactly all that straight. And also you don't want nails pulling back out. It's going to be on the door, it's going to swing, people are going to bump into it, I'm going to bump into it. So I'm going to go ahead and use screws. I have some in 1 5/8, and I also bought a specialty bit that will not only pre-drill it, but it will countersink the screws so I can fill it in with wood filler and paint over it later. So right now I'm going to go ahead and get the shelves attached to the sideboards. I may use a couple of trim nails just to hold them in place, so that way they don't move, and then I can go ahead and pre-drill them and input the screws. I'll get back to the 2 other pieces that will come in later. So for now, let's get started. You always want to make sure to keep your hands out of the way. Watch the guy actually do that. Building a deck one time, had it just like this, a thumb on there to keep it flush, stuck the nail gun up to it, pulled the trigger, went right up through the end of it. So keep your fingers out of the way. Go ahead and flip this over, make my other marks, go ahead and nail the other sides. All right, so now that we got all those done, I get the screws here in a minute. Well, I have a chance. I'll show you what the other two are for. Now, to get this to anchor to the wall, you can simply buy metal brackets, or if you're really adventurous, drill you a hole deep enough and go straight through the front face of this and into the door. But I cut two of these. One will go down here at the bottom and sit flush against the back. So instead of it being in here like this, like a shelf, it's actually going to turn and lay on its back. So that way it fits in the back. You have all of this to mount to, and it's more than supportive. Now, there's a couple of modes of thought there. You can set it towards the bottom, so you can anchor from the sides, or you can also anchor from the bottom. So if this was all the way down at the bottom, then you can come up through the bottom here. Now, others, they prefer the weight to be on the bottom of this one. So that way this shelf is pushing down against this. These are holding in from the sides, and then the whole thing can push down on this shelf, which is anchored in from the sides. Doesn't matter which way you want to do it. I'm just going to stick with the bottom of it. So, a couple more here. Make sure I don't nail into my floor. Just put it all down, so I don't think I want to tear it up just yet. I'll figure out something here. There we go. One here, one here. Slide that in there. Flush it up. Now you have a mounting point. So it sits in the back. All the way down, sits flush from underneath. And then you can anchor to the door in different points and anchor from the bottom. So now to the top one. Breathe a little heavy. That's what that COVID will get you. It's been fun, that's for sure. Makes you feel like you're about 50. Or at least in my case anyway. Slows you down. It took quite a while just to get the floors done. Again, all the way down. Flushed. Couple of nails to hold it in place. Zoom back out. Had I been in here holding on to this, putting my fingers in the way, that would have been more than enough to go through my thumb. So, keep your hands out of the way. For now, let's get the decorative boards on. I'll show you how the whole reveal comes together. So, I could have done the plexi like I said. Wasn't a real big fan of it. You're just gonna have plexi right in the way. Granted, if it was all plexi, then you could see through it. You could see what you're after. But these had a little bit of detail, a little bit more design. So I went ahead and went with these, and I should have painted them white, but I'll get there. So you can do it one of two ways. You can cut them longer and go across the entire front so it would sit side to side. Or you could come up a little bit, leave a little bit of a gap if you really wanted to. I'm going to actually try and come in between them here and set it down here, just like so. Add a little bit. There's one, two. Ooh. want to, you can come in here and try and get some nails. I'm not going to do that right now. I'll get the rest of these done through here. And there you have it. One spice rack. Now, to get the whole thing mounted on the door, I'm going to take a breather too. So, after a brief intermission, we have it all nailed together. These are sitting flush for the most part. I'm not a woodworker. I don't like to work with wood. I don't know what it is. I'm just probably better at electrical and stuff. So anyway, you get it here. You're going to put some screws in it to anchor it to the door itself. Now I know it would be a challenge. You know, you say, hey Pullman, what about if I'm the only one working? Well, so am I. So if you remember, we had the bottom shelf was roughly 2 feet off the ground. So what you can do is slide your piece out of the way. If I can figure out where to put it, let me just do some circles. Come up from the floor, you're 2 feet. Now look, stop it, I don't want to hug. Make you a mark at 2 feet on your left-hand line. Now you come over to the middle a little bit, make you another mark at 2 feet. Granted, I should probably do something other than permanent Sharpie. Now that you have those two marked, you get you one of your scrap pieces from cutting your other shelves. Get you a couple of starter screws, screw gun. If you want to do it with a Phillips screwdriver, be my guest, I'm not doing it. Go ahead and start them. Line it up with your 2 feet mark. And then anchor it. Now you have a ledge you can set the bottom of it on. You'll want to go ahead and pre-start some screws. No sense in trying to put it up on the wall and then fight with grabbing your screws, trying to get them on the end of your drill. I use a longer bit so that way I can stay down here. It'll keep your screws a little more hidden, and I don't have to worry about whether I can get all the way to the back or not. You don't have to, you put screws in up top. This is where I prefer to put them. That. Now, look at that. A tool holder. Spice rack tool holder. Who would have thought? Now you pick the whole thing up, see if the drill stays up there and don't hit me in the head. Just bring it down until it sits on there. Line it up with your left line. Then, see, I don't even have to hold the bottom of it. It stays there. Well, shoot, I'm 6'1", I still can't see the screws. I got it. Maybe. Gotta get it seated in the head. There's one. Now it's pretty much self-supporting. You can get more of them in there at the top. Doesn't matter. Go ahead and put in a couple of them down here. Now, you can, at the end of this, go ahead and take this piece out of here. I will, just because it's not the full width, I will probably cut another piece that's a little bit shorter. I do have some trim work from doors and stuff. It's a little bit thinner. Some of it's angled. If you notice, like most of the common windows, they're just fat here and thinner here. And it'll actually work to where you could put the thick end up at the top and the narrow end down at the bottom, and it'll just kind of come down just like this one does. Now granted, you don't have to. It's just an extra little bit of support to keep it from sagging. It's not like it's really, I mean, and then again, I guess if you're gonna go in here and put, you know, you're gonna do a lot of canning and put a lot of jars and stuff, you may want to put some extra supports underneath of it, but I would think a few screws here and there. Them two are already up there. Find the other one. There. Now, you get your spices and whatever else you have, you can just kind of chunk it in there any which way you want them. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more room because it's wider than the originals. Throw those away. Now, some of these I made taller. Obviously, the top one, this is cheap stuff, buttered flavor syrup. It can go clear at the top. It does not, I don't know if it'll go in there or not. Let's see. Shoot, let's see if the whole thing fits. Oh no! I guess the syrup bottle won't fit. Look at that. But the rest of it does. So virtually anything shorter than a syrup bottle can go in the top. Obviously your zesty Italian will go in there, and it's actually wide enough that your zesty Italian or your salad dressings can fit. So they can go in there. Oh shoot, you put all kinds of stuff in there. There's some popcorn. That's probably stuff I don't need really. But your extra virgin olive oil. Oh, just a bit outside, but it will go at the top. So, a little bit of touch-up paint in white. I'll go back through here now that this is up in a working level. I can go through here, drill, countersink my screw heads, fill them in a little bit, sand them down. Get rid of some of these nail heads and fill them in. Do some final touch-up white paint. And then you have a full-on spice rack. Now granted, you're gonna have a lot more room than what you used to. I don't even know what some of these things are. I don't even know what you use some of these for. Ginger. Oh, that's a hair color. Beef bouillon cubes. Must be little bite sites of meat or something. So, there you have it. One DIY junk spice rack to a decent spice rack that holds a lot more stable, stays on the door, and when this is actually closed, you're gaining that much more storage space. I mean, if I can get in here, there's enough room for a storage shelf. So, until I get another electrical project, which speaking of, eventually it will come out that I got to do the video workup. The electric chopper decided to have a battery meltdown. I'll get into that as to why we use fuses on the cells. But first good woodworking project on top of doing all the floors. Floors was way too big of a project. I was not about to do that. That was 300 square feet or so. May come up later in another bathroom addition to do the master bath and the interlocking floor, but we will see. For the most part, I'll stick with electrons, things like that, not woodworking. So, until next video.